Hello, welcome to my studio. I'm Jeff Staniford and it's absolutely great to have you with me tonight. We're going to paint a lovely marsh scene and I hope you'll enjoy being with me. Be using soft pastels and that's what I specialise in at the moment. I know that some of you already know me, but there are others who've never met me before, so I'll just quickly introduce myself. I started painting as a hobby when I was 14 years old, and that's more years ago than I care to remember. By the time I was 15, I was going out on my bicycle around the local area with a painting kit in the saddlebag and painting plein air sketches. I wanted to do art at university. It was my ambition. However, parental interference prevented that. So after a couple of false starts, I went to university and became a scientist and worked as a scientist until I retired. Since I retired 11 years ago, I've qualified as a professional art tutor with the SAA, which I think is the world's largest arts organisation. It's got well over 40,000 members. And I teach a weekly class here on the Wirral, and I also do demonstrations on an occasional basis for local art societies. And since last month I started to do these virtual demonstrations. So that's enough about me. The way that I'll structure the evening is I'll talk through the preparation that I make for a painting and then demonstrate the actual painting processes. About halfway through we'll have a short break so that people can stand up and stretch, maybe get a drink or whatever it is you need to do. But before the break, just before the break, I'll look at the comments on Facebook. So if you've any questions, put them in the comments and I'll answer them before the break. And then the same in the second half. I'll be painting the refinement stage of the work and reviewing it at the end. But then I'll look at the comments on Facebook again. So if there are any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So I think that's enough. Let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about the motivation for using this particular scene and the background to it. Roughly about 16 years ago, I was on a 5-day workshop in Norfolk, and at the end of quite a long day where we'd been painting large skies in oil on big canvases in the studio, and it was quite a rainy day. I left the building where we were, and it wasn't residential, so I drove towards Brancaster Staithe, where I was staying. It's about 10 miles or so from where the workshop was, and I stopped at a car park and walked along one of the Marsh footpaths. I had my little pack on my back with a small painting kit and a small stool, and I came across this view I took this photograph first, and then, of course, this was with a film camera in those days. I didn't have a digital camera. And then I set up my stool and got my little pack of gouache paints out. So I usually use a very limited palette with the gouache, and in this particular little field study I used a cool red, a cool yellow and a cool blue. So it was lemon yellow and permanent rose and phthalo blue and white. So that was my limited palette, and this little study took me about 25 minutes. When the photograph came back from the processors, I was really disappointed because the colours were completely wrong, and also the perspective's not very good, is it? When you look at the photograph, it really doesn't show that this was very much in the foreground and this is in the distance. So in my little field study, it's the same scene, and what really attracted me to the scene was this shape here interlocked with this shape, and the light and the time of day, and the photographers completely lost the time of day really compared to what I managed to get in the study. So that's a good lesson really, that if you work solely from photographs, then you do lose a lot of your own impressions. Excuse me. So the lesson I draw from this is that wherever possible, if you can do a little field study, this is 6 inches by 4 inches, and that's really useful, and I'll tell you why it's really useful a bit later. But it only takes 20-25 minutes or so to do a study like this, and that imprints things in your memory. 16 years later, when I get this out in this sketchbook and look at it, I'm back there. I know what it felt like in that early evening in Norfolk, and I can hear the seagulls, and I can feel the breeze, and I can smell the marsh, whereas the photograph doesn't bring it back in the same way. So that's why I think field studies are really great to do. In this particular instance, I'd been with, and in a room with 10 people and the smell of oil paint all day, and then there I am out on the marsh, not a soul about, and absolutely beautiful, and it just, all the strains and stresses of working in a workshop with other people just melted away. So anyway, coming back to now, what I've done with the miracle of digital camera, I've taken a photograph off this photograph, blown it up. This just finishes about here and goes to there. So and I've turned it into a monochrome, and I'm going to put this to one side. I won't be using that again. I won't be referring to that again. I'll be looking at this just to give me some idea, if I feel it's necessary, to do a little bit of detail work on this waterline and where these reflections are. But my study gives me pretty much everything else I need. So that's what we'll be working with now, is we'll be working from this study, and then in the last stages of refinement we'll probably refer to this. One of the things that we can notice though, with this monochrome, there's very little change in tonal contrast. The tonal range of this picture is very limited indeed. It only covers about 4 or 5 steps on the 10-point tonal scale. So it's important that we remember that when we come to the colours. Now, I'll probably, in my finished painting, push that tonal range a little bit more, but that's something to be decided later. So what I'm going to do now is let you have a look at my pastel outfit while I move these things away and get them set up on the easel. Okay, so I'll switch cameras now. The first stage of the underpainting is to get some pastel onto the board. As you can see, I'm using Fisher 400 and it's mounted onto an A3 gator board, which is a type of foam board, and it's completely flat. It's very, very light. And when you work like this, you can work right up to the edges with it, so that you can easily frame it like an oil painting. I don't suppose this is going to turn up into something that I'd frame, but you never know. Let's see how we get on. So we'll start with, this is going to be our lightest tone for the underpainting. And we don't put too much pastel on, just a wee bit. Then our middle tone is going to go on this section that's the water. The sanded paper, it does take the pastel beautifully. No. We don't have to worry too much about this drawing at this stage. It's just very approximate. Everything will be tightened up later on. And then our darkest tone goes over the. In fact, what I might do is just put a little bit of that middle tone up there, and then go in and just put a shade of the dark tone in amongst it, and come down here with the dark tone. So. There's various ways. Different artists like to do these things in different ways. Some people like to do side-to-side strokes on this sort of underpainting when they're doing the initial initial dry pastel. But for this particular piece, I now want to go in with the wet process, and I want to get lots of drips. I want to get drips going down as texture for me to build on. Now, what I use for this is I use isopropyl alcohol. You can use water, and you can use mineral spirits. Either low odor spirits or white spirit or terps. But this is the 99.9% alcohol. And it dries very quickly. So for the purposes of the demonstration, that's an important issue. Now, if you've never used this before, you do need to take really great care. It's extremely inflammable, and you don't want it to be anywhere near a naked flame or a spark. My grandson earlier in the year was having trouble lighting the barbecue. And he found some of this in his father's garage, and he knew that it would go on fire. So he took it out, and he threw it onto the embers on the barbecue. There was a flashback of about 7 or 8 feet from the barbecue to him, and he suffered really nasty burns on his chest and face, and he had to have significant hospital attention to that. So it's not to be messed about with. I just put a tiny drop into a little jug. And what I don't use, I clear away right away. I don't want the studio to be filled with fumes because it evaporates, and you can end up with an inflammable mixture of air in your studio. So it is something that's to be used very carefully, and certainly to be kept away from children. So I'm using an old hog's hair brush. And I'm just going to spread this around on the Fisher sanded paper. And as you can see, I'm not worried about drips. In fact, I'm encouraging drips to go down. So there's our lightest light done, and you notice I didn't bother about the trees. I've simplified that, and with this kind of thing, it makes sense to work from light to dark, and it's again, we want to get lots of texture going on here in this part that's going to be water. So this is the way that I operate on it. Now you notice there's plenty of the sandpaper showing through this. It's not one of those things where I want to cover the whole thing up. What I want is an underpainting that provides visual texture for me to play off when I'm doing the other parts of the painting. And some of it, hopefully, set up indiciously, I'll be able to leave and show, and it will actually show through a little bit on the final finished piece. So this is it. It's all great fun. It's very exciting. You don't know what the heck's going to happen, and you've got to react to it when it's happened. So that's pretty good. So what we'll do now, who said that's a mess?
Who said that's a mess?
Okay. Well, it is. But it's a lovely mess that we're going to build upon. This isn't the picture. It's just a foundation. And it gives me something to play against. It's not just a plain sandy surface. So what we'll do now, I'll talk you through the colours I'm going to use and why I'm going to use them while we leave that to dry. While the underpainting's drying, I'll talk through my choice of colours with the pastels. This device here is a colour harmony wheel, and it's been put together by an American artist called Jill Ryder, and I found it to be a useful tool. With pastels, as you know, mostly we haven't got all the colours that we think we might need. So it's useful to work to a colour scheme. And this tool is designed for us to use harmonious schemes. Now I've set this because I've chosen two yellows to make a start on the Marsh, and those two yellows are here on this colour wheel. And then we can see that around here. All these colours will harmonise with those. So I've chosen for the underpainting colours in this range. For the sky, I've chosen colours in this range. And then for the marsh, I've got this colour. Now these two colours here, these are contrasting colours. Some artists like to call them rogue colours. And it's often a good idea when you're doing a harmonious painting to have a little accent in one of the colours that are a considerable contrast. So the old landscape painters, like John Constable, for example, in the UK, and just to name one, George Innes in the US. They knew this intuitively, but over the 19th and 20th century, this has been codified for us. So I am going to choose this colour. That's a variety of green that I'm going to start with. So what I've got here are my first choices. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to paint a complete pastel painting with only those colours. But they're my first choices to start with, and I know that they're going to provide a harmonious colour scheme for me. And then as I work, I'll choose other pastels from the box that that I need as I go along, and I'll discover those as I go along. So you've already seen me use these three here in the underpainting, and they form the basis on which I'll build with these other colours, and this one, and maybe even a darker one, I'll use again for accents in the painting. I'll probably use this one along with the blues in the sky. So that's my starting harmonious palette, and it's based on very good colour theory. I'll just check now whether the underpainting's dry, and if it is, we'll be able to go over to the easel again and get started on the first part of the painting process. Oh yes, I mentioned that the 6x4 inch size of my little field study is really useful, and there's two reasons it's useful. The first obvious one is that it's a nice little size to work on a quick study when you're either when you're in the studio or at home or when you're outside. But also the ratio of the short side to the long side, which is 2 to 3, is exactly the same ratio as all the European A-sized papers. And this is an A3, and this ratio is 2 to 3. So it's the same ratio, and it's the same for A4, it's the same for A2, A1, etc. So that's one of the things about the A series papers. They're all in the same ratio of short side to long side. So that's why with the 6x4 you've got the same proportions as you have on the A-sized papers. You don't need to do any complicated calculations to change things. So we're going to work on the sky to start with, and I'm going to use see what this blue looks like. Yeah, I think we'll have a go at that. So I'll start over here, I think. Now I just want to be fairly gentle. This is a new stick. It'll wear in a minute. I don't want to put too much blue on, and this is going to be a very quiet part of the whole scene. So we'll put the blue on like that, and then I'm going to do just a little bit of finger blending. You have to do this very gently on a sanded paper, or you'll take the skin off your fingers. So we don't want it to be over blended, and I've been thinking about where this tree line would be. It's going to be a wee bit lower in this part, so we'll come down there. So it's a very, very quiet sky, this, Now I want it to be much lighter on this side, so we'll go in with a wee bit of white, and that's probably enough. Just blend with a clean finger when you're moving from one colour to another. So that's enough for the sky. I'll get my wet wipes out. And I want to put the tree line in. Did you notice that when I was using the blue pastel on the sky, the way to get a feathered edge is to lift the pastel off very gently. So it's the same when we want to put the tree line in. If we start at the bottom and then lift off with the pastel as we go, what we get is a tree line that's okay. That's sort of graduated, and with just a little bit of work with your fingers, you can end up with something that is going to disappear into the background when we've finished. So at the moment, of course, it doesn't look like trees because I've used a fairly purple grey pastel. I'll be coming back into that with a little bit of dark green before I'm finished. And over on the right hand side, I want it to be a fairly neutral pale blue, which I haven't already picked out, so I'm looking in my box. I think that might work. No, that's too dark. Go a stage lighter. Yeah, I think that might work. So we'll, on this side, we'll have some trees that are a wee bit cooler than the ones on the left. And again, I'm just going to, at this stage, blend them in. See, this colour blocking, you don't want to get involved in what the painting's going to look like when it's finished. You're building on the underpainting with the blocking, but you're still not producing the finished painting. So that's something to remember. It's very easy to think, oh, I'll just do this, I'll add a bit more there, but hold back from that when you're doing a blocking, and get some colour on all the different parts of the painting. So what I'm going to do now is put a bit of green, and with this distant part here, I'm going to use horizontal strokes to put the colour in, and I'm not I want that to go up a bit there. Okay, so what we're not doing is using downstrokes. When I get down to here, I'll be working with downstrokes, and that'll work better. But in this part, we want to remain with the strokes not so deep, and then we'll go in here with some yellow, but I want to do a little bit of blending with the pastel, so you can see what I'm doing there. I'm going in there now. At the moment, the yellow is going on, and it's going on against this purple. It's complementary colour, and it's starting to sing, isn't it? And that's the sort of thing that we want. So we've got the two bands there of the green in the distance and the yellow. So I'm now going to go on to using and this is where I'm going to I'll go across for the first one, like so. Again, do a little bit of blending there with the pastel. Everything's very light at this stage. Now I'm going to start coming down with these colours, and you notice that it's very, very light what I'm putting on, and it's allowing some of that texture to show through. We'll decide how much texture to allow later on, but that's got the Marsh part blocked in with colour, and the sky and the hill. At this stage I haven't thought about the buildings in the background. So what do we want to do with this water? Well, we'll get some of the sky colour into it to start with, and again I'm going to do the same as I did with the Marsh. I'm going to just go across here, and then when we get to here we'll start to do downstrokes. Okay, and then as we get further down we'll use a deeper blue. So that's the colour blocking. So we've moved from an underpainting to having some colour all over the paper. The colour is a first guess, and it's not necessarily what we'll finish up with, but it's a first guess. As I'm looking at it now, I do think that I'll need to modify this part a little bit. This isn't looking too bad. It's going to get warmed up further down here, and then that's going to change. We'll have to work on that. I think it's possible I might have to lighten the sky up a touch, but we'll see how we go. So what we're going to do now is I'll have a look at Facebook and have a look to see whether any questions have come in the comments, and then after that we'll have an intermission for 10 minutes so that you can stand up or whatever you need to do. So I'll switch cameras and get looking at Facebook. Apologies about the sound. I hope it's okay now. A good friend phoned me and let me know that I had 2 microphones switched on, which was causing quite a problem. I see on Facebook that Dave Mack from Neston says hello. Hello, Dave. It's great that you're with me. And Sue Matthew from Norfolk. It's lovely that you could join us, Sue. That's absolutely great. And Joan Tunnicliffe from Neston Art Society. It's great that you're with us. It's often the case that people ask what make of pastels that an artist uses. And I don't specialise in one particular make. I do use artist quality pastels, and I use Unison from the UK, and Terry Ludwig, the American pastel company. I use those, and I also use Mount Vision. I think they're Australian, and Blue Earth, another American make, and I use Sennelier, French, and Schminker, the German pastels. So I don't know what the manufacturer's names and numbers are of my pastels. As soon as I get them, before I put them in the box, I take the labels off and break them into pieces. So I just use my eye to determine what the colours are. I know that would drive some people mad, but that's the kind of person I am. I prefer to be visual rather than trying to remember hundreds of names. And then also surfaces. So I'm working today, as I said earlier, on Fisher 400. So I use that quite a lot, and I use UArt sanded paper. I haven't used the coarsest UR paper, that's 320 grit, but I've tried out the 400, 500, 600 and 800 grit, and again I like to use the 400 the best, but UR curls quite a lot, so you can't afford not to mount UR, you've got to mount it. And then also I use Pastel Matte and Art Spectrum paper. I like those because you can get them in different colours, and so quite often if I'm working on a coloured paper I don't feel the necessity to do an underpainting, but I think I definitely do more work on the sanded papers. Okay, so we'll stop there, and I'll play a little slideshow with some reference photos in while people make themselves a drink or whatever. So we'll be back in 10 minutes, and there'll be a timer on the screen while that goes ahead. Welcome back. As you can see, during the break I've taken a photograph of the colour blocking and turned it into monochrome. And looking at the monochrome, it's much easier to see that we've got the top third of the marsh lighter than the sky. And of course that's not right. That means we've got the tonal values wrong. So I'm going to have to lighten up the sky a bit, and I'm going to have to darken the tonal value of the top third of the marsh, and then I'll be able to lighten up the water as well. So we'll switch you back to the main camera and we'll get on with the painting. As we've just discussed, I need to lighten up the sky, and it's something that it's got to be done fairly carefully. I'm not too worried about the marsh because I'll be making marks in the marsh that yeah, I'll be making marks in the marsh that will change the overall tonal value of it, but the sky was definitely a shade too dark. So I'm going to lighten it up and just leave it a little bit darker over on that left hand side. Okay, so that's I think that'll be okay like that, and that'll give us the opportunity to lighten this water here. I think it might be a good idea to take a wee bit of a cool green to these trees, just a little bit, not too much, and again I'll just smooth that out. Yeah, so we want those to be well in the background. We can go in now and do just a couple of shapes with these buildings. I don't want to use a white, so I'm going to use a very, very pale yellow, I think. Yep, that should be okay. So we'll just put just a few marks. Yeah, and let's get one or two different sorts of shapes. The thing to do, we don't want them all to be disconnected. Otherwise they look like jagged teeth sticking up, and that's not what we want at all. So we'll put that in, and then with a light grey, I think that might work. We'll just put the odd bit of texture. We don't want too much green showing through these buildings, and that's probably enough. So I'll leave that at that point, and I want to put a few marks into the marsh, which need to be fairly pale, and of course they need to be going horizontally in here, so, but not too sharp. What I'm looking at is how can I get the eye to be brought round here a bit. So we do need a few marks on there. When you've got the pastel on like this, it's possible to blend with the pastel itself. So that's calmed it down a little bit. We could go in with a bit more of this up here. And again, we're not completely covering that fairly vibrant red yellow, but just building up. Want to reinforce the edge of the water shape, and there's a great temptation when you want to do that to get one of those beautiful Terry Ludwig darks or unison darks. However, with our restricted tonal values, that's not open to us, so this is nothing like as dark as those, but you can see that it is showing up as quite dark when I put it in. So and then just carefully make sure the edges are not too sharp. And then over here, this is where we want some, we want some tones, but want it to be subdued and soft. So it's quite difficult to describe what you're actually doing with the pastel stick, but you're varying the pressure through your stroke, and your pressure is at its least as you lift off. That's oops, and it's easy because you've got a very light grip. It's fairly easy to drop the flipping thing. So that's broken quite a chunk off that. Never mind. So yeah, so the best of us, and I'm not the best of us have that happen to us. So that needs a touch more there, and a bit more here. Yeah. What's going to happen is that this will require more work as I carry on. But already we can see, standing back, that it's starting to build up in a pleasing way. At the moment, I think that's too much of a line. I've got to break that up. So I think I'm going to go in here with that and break that line up a little bit. And then we'll add a shade more of the yellow over that. Okay. Now I'm starting to take shape. So I need to put something a bit warmer lower down, and this is where you've got to be very, very careful with it's too easy to go too orange. So let's try that. No, I think that's too strong. That's too bright. So this is a hard pastel. This is a Faber-Castell, and yeah, that's going on. That's quite nice. So we can put some of that on. A bit more down here. Yep. And we want some over here. Some up there. Okay. So in the palette, that looks quite brown in the palette, but when you get it on relative to the other colours, it does take on that autumny orangey sort of a grade off orange that we get in the UK. So I think it's time now that we that we put some more on the water. So this part here, I'm going to go in across and just have a little bit in there. They just start to come down into this part. Okay. We don't want these edges to be too now in this bottom part, this lower part, it's important not to have it too light. It forms the base of the whole composition, and if you have it too light, then the light falls out of the picture. So I need it to be fairly dark, and I also want to just have a little hint of that turquoise. So let's see what this looks like. I think that's not going to work. That's too bright. Is that too light? Yeah, we can perhaps put a little bit of that on. Just go very faintly across. And so on this bottom part, we've got a fairly dark blue, so let's put a wee bit more of it on. This is a slightly different one, by the way. It's only very slight, that, so I think on the bottom edge go a bit darker again. And I also think that would be quite good to get some darker green on there, on this part. think the time's come now to stand back and take stock and decide what we want to do next. While I've been thinking about that for a few seconds or so, I've taken the opportunity to look at the screen, and I think the lights that I've got near on the attached to the easel are a bit bright, so I'm dimming those, and I'm going to just alter this zoom level slightly so that you can see the top of it better. Yeah, that's one of the problems when you're working on your own. You've got your back to what the camera's been doing all the time. And the other thing is, I'm thinking that I was going to get away without using one of my beautiful dark cherry Ludwigs, but I think I'm going to use it very judiciously. And also I'm going to bring in a little bit of brown. These two parts here are very similar in shape and size, so I need to change that a bit. So we'll do that. What we'll do is just go over with that and take that should be enough. And we definitely want a little bit of darkness under there. So I said before, judicious use of the Terry Ludwig, but first of all I'm going to introduce just a wee bit of brown into some parts of this, because it's not all violet. Just a few bits. That needed to change. It was too square there, and I also want to build this up a little bit because I've sort of lost the shape there. So we'll build that up a bit. So just going to go in there and add a bit of brown in places. Then just a few judicious touches with this Terry Ludwig, not too much, otherwise it'll run away with us, and that's far too much. Okay, so yeah, just a couple of little bits in places, and one or two vertical bits we can go in and do with it. Not you can easily overdo this, but we've got quite a bit of horizontal work, and it's quite good to just have the odd bit where the horizontals are broken up a little bit. Not going to try and do too much texture, but that's enough of that for the moment. Now, I've decided that I want to do a bit more green and a darker green in this corner. And I'm going to try something else that looks a bit drastic but can improve the appearance of water. I'm going to use the heel of my hand and I'm going to go straight down there like so. And see how that looks. Of course this is what you get, so you have to clean it off. But yeah, I think that's improved it a bit. So let's build up now this area a bit more, because I did lose that shape on the, so a bit more of that, and then some of this, yeah. And that's quite good to use actually, just down that way a bit in places, because it gives you again a slight feeling of reflection when you do that. And it's quite good to have separate colours. I mean colours that are repeated in different parts of the painting. So I think that's an improvement. I've got, there's definitely some of the underpainting showing through. It's helped guide me, but also I've left parts of it showing through. I think one of the things that we need to do is, yeah, in this part, let's have just a little bit more calligraphy, but not too excessive. Yeah, and I think we could take the edge of this dark green pastel that I used, and I'll come over this side again and just do a couple of dark lines, not too many and not too big, some of them. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe they should have been not quite so straight. Let's see how that looks from back here. I don't like it. Okay, so let's go back in with this and make that a more broken line. So what we've got is we've got our four corners, different colours and tones. we've got our water darker than the sky, but it's still okay, I think. And our marsh, without painting any detail whatsoever, is looking reasonably okay. I think there's a few little areas where it's perhaps a bit sharp, a few touches here and there that are not so good, but the underpainting is showing through here, and it's also showing through here, so it is holding the whole thing together. But I am not totally happy about that blue. So no, it's not that one. This one's very difficult to see in the palette. I think I'm going to come across for this, and only have the blue. Peeking through. So well, I think that's probably about 95% finished. I might, when I reflect on it tomorrow, I might do a little bit more on the waterline, but I think it would be easy to fiddle too much and to spoil what's already there without being more reflective. Yeah, so I think we'll stop there and we'll review where we're at, what we've done. We started off with a wet alcohol underpainting, and whenever you do that, you can't do the same thing twice. It's not all that controllable, and you end up with different results. Sometimes you get it darker than others, sometimes you get better streaks than others, but you've got something to play against, something to work with. And then we did a colour blocking over that with the soft dry pastel, and then we've gone in and we've refined the painting, and now it's a study that's well on the way to being finished. One of the things that you can think about this process, it's not guaranteed to give you success. No process in art is, but it's a process that you can do part of it, the early parts of it, even when the muse is not with you. You can still have fun and still be creative in those early parts, but they're fairly easy to do, and what the whole process does is it reduces the number of failures. Lots of artists use it, and as I said, there's no guarantee, but you tend to find once you're used to the process that the number of failures that you have, complete failures, are reduced. Now, I like to liken it to a metaphor of baking the cake. The underpainting is the cake, and then the colour blocking is the marzipan layer, and then the refinement is the icing layer on the top. So you can go in and start. Lots of artists, for example, like to start with the centre of interest and work out from there. And it's a perfectly valid way of working, and lots of people do it very successfully. But certainly if you come into paint plein air, you've just seen me work on an A3, and the time that you would have while before the light changed, and I've had to do a lot of talking, so I've been working slower than I would normally. So you can do this whole process. You can paint this in 20 minutes, and then you can do this in an hour or so. So you can actually use this when you're painting outside plein air, but you don't need to just keep it to plein air. Of course, you can use it in the studio like we have done tonight. I'm not 100% happy. I do like the textural effect that's showing through, and it's fairly abstract in places. So I don't want to alter it now. I'd like to think about that, and maybe I won't alter it. But there we are. So that's our Marsh study for this time. So I'm now going to have a look at Facebook and see whether you've got any more questions for me. Okay, let's hope I got the microphones right this time. Thanks for staying with me. I've been looking at Facebook, and a fair few things have come in that I didn't see first time round. So hello to June Turner, if you're still here, from Mount Forest in Ontario, Canada. I'm honoured to have you join us, and I hope that you've learned something and got something from it. Apologies again for the sound. There's an awful lot going on here when you are working yourself, trying to paint, trying to control the technology. And what happened was that I inadvertently left an extra microphone on. So we've got some more questions come in. Dave McCormack, you make the point that I was using a very light touch, and one of the things that really bugged me when I first moved over to pastel painting was that I started to try to go straight for what was in the reference, and it was a demonstration at Airby Arts Association by a guy called Paul Pygram, who has his studio out at Bodmin Gardens in North Wales, and that was like a light bulb going off. when I saw him do the layering. So it's really worth practicing and working at developing a light touch. I mean, I'm 6'4" and I've got big plates of meat, and it wasn't easy to develop a light touch, but it really pays off to paint in layers. Now, someone else I think was asking, is it possible to work on ordinary pastel paper like mi-tinte or engrais, and with a light touch? Well, yes it is, and it's a good idea to do it, but you can't get as many layers on that paper that's got a much finer tooth. So you're limited to 3 or 4 layers. Well, you saw me in places tonight work and probably put 7 or 8 layers over certain parts of the painting. And some artists, I believe, can get up into the 20s, but they've probably got a lighter touch than I've managed to achieve so far. I'm probably not going to get any better now at my age, because my hands are starting to get a bit arthritic, and it's not as easy to hold the pastel as it used to be. So let's see, that Brian Thompson, you asked, will it be possible excuse me, to see the videos afterwards? And yes, it is. They'll get saved on Facebook, and then at some point over the next couple of days, time allowing, I'll transfer the video. I won't transfer it. I'll take a copy of the video and put it on my YouTube channel. Last month we had, I think it was 199 views on Facebook altogether, and then about 40 on the YouTube channel. So quite a lot of people managed to see it. They couldn't be there when it was going out live, and I was very heartened by that. And let me see. Right, June loves the trick with the palm on the water. Yeah, that was shown to me by a painter from who lives in the Lake District of the UK, called Greg Howard, and it is one of those things that's a trick, and obviously you could overdo it, but there are times when, particularly if you're demonstrating to people and you think it's going a bit wrong, where that comes in quite handy. So I think there was another question, I think, that I didn't get to. We've looked at the brands, yeah. Oh yeah, I know what it was. It was, can you use alcohol on the pastel matte paper? That's from Janet Rossiter. And the answer is, I don't think you can. I've never tried it myself, but pastel matte paper, the surface is made up of vegetable fibres, and that's what gives it its tooth. It's not as strong a tooth as the sandpapers like UArt or the Fisher, but it's not as soft as something like velour. But velour paper and pastel matte paper, if you get them wet, you totally ruin the surface. It dissolves the vegetable fibres. They're very fine, so any wetness completely dissolves them. And people claim that the alcohol does the same. So if you want to try it, I suggest that you try it on a piece of scrap, and don't try it on a painting that you're working on. But as I say, I haven't tried it, but other people don't recommend it at all. Talking about paper, you heard it here first. There's a new paper available on the market. It's called Lux Archival, Lux. And I think it's been available in the United States for a couple of months. There's one or two American artists that I correspond with who claim that this paper is really, really good. It's absolutely beautiful to use. Well, all I can say is it should be, because before we started this evening, I checked on Jackson's art online in London to see whether it's reached this country, and it has. The big downside to it is that it costs £60 for 5 sheets of 20 by 16. If you buy the full size sheets, the 36 by 24, it's well over £100 for 5 sheets. So that's going to put an awful lot of people off using it, however beautiful it is to use. Apparently it's an absolute pure shining white, so it would obviously, you'd need to think about the techniques you were going to use on it. I would guess though, if it's a sanded paper, which it's supposed to be, like UArt or like Fisher 400, if you make a mess on those papers, you can wash it off in the bath, or if you've got a big sink. You can use a shower spray and a gentle brush and wash the pastel off the paper, so long as you've not used fixative. And then you can, you know, and I've done this many times, and what you're left with is just a ghost image of what you already had, which you can easily use as an underpainting and paint over. And then you've still got your tooth, and it takes pastel again beautifully. And if it buckles a bit, like the UArt certainly would buckle, all you do is put it between a couple of pieces of blotting paper and then weight it down between a couple of boards and leave it a day or so to dry out, and then it dries flat. So that's an interesting thing. Next month, on the 3rd Tuesday, I've decided I'm going to do a simple river scene, a river bend. It'll be based on a reference that I took when I was on holiday in Wyoming a few years ago, near Jackson Hole in Wyoming, and I managed to find a lovely spot. Don't quite know how I managed to do this, but Jackson Hole is surrounded by the Rocky Mountains. It's in a valley, and it's totally surrounded by mountains, and I managed to find a view on this river where you can't see a mountain. However, it's still a beautiful reference. And I also managed to find a spot where there weren't any fishermen, because in the summer, in that area, it's a really great area for fishing as a sport, and people do lots of fishing holidays. And in actual fact, the ranch I stayed at, that was 7,000 feet up in the Rockies. Apart from myself and my companions, all the other people that were there on the ranch were fishermen. However, I managed to get a bit of painting done and quite a bit of sightseeing. So that's what I'll be doing next month. I'll be using a different technique than I've used last month and tonight. I haven't decided which one yet, but it will be different, I promise. So I hope you'll be able to join me. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed tonight and that you've learned a bit from it, and I look forward to being with you again. So thanks very much, and bye.